I'm a big fan of Yapon, and I just wondered if you could begin by saying a little bit about when you started to think about the follow-up film, Battle in Heaven, and how, and in what ways you think it maybe compares and contrasts to your first film.
Okay. Well, actually, after Japón started its run in May in Cannes, and then during that summer I did some festivals, and then I went back to Mexico and had a trip around, as I always like to do in summer time. And I was in Morelia, which is a colonial city, and it was raining very hard. And I was next to the cathedral, and this is like the colonial center, so all buildings are very powerful. And I was protecting myself from the rain with most of the people next to the cathedral, and all of a sudden I saw this fat and very powerful looking man walking barefoot and without a shirt, only with his trousers on the rain, and with a little candle on him like this, and then he also had like a Virgin Mary of Guadalupe on his other hand, and he was like in a trance walking, and this image, I found it so powerful that I thought I should do a film with this, with an ending like this, or with a moment like this. And then all the rest I just constructed around, Herzog says that he starts constructing a film that it comes from a landscape. Well, to me it happened with this image that I found so powerful. So from that moment in the summer of that year, I started thinking. I wrote the film in September, then I started drawing and preparing everything, and we were shooting the next summer.
I know that the way you work, you don't necessarily show your actors scripts in advance. But I just wondered, Anna, how, when Carlos approached you to work with him, not having a script to read, what was it that convinced you? I mean, apart from his dashing good looks, obviously, what was it that convinced you to kind of get involved? Did you go back and seek out Japan and look at the film?
Yes, because I haven't seen it, so I saw a film, and I really liked it. And I thought it was going to be like a better experience to do a film that is not a conventionally film. So the idea sounded really attractive for me, and I really admire his work, and I like him a lot as a person. So I was really happy, and I believed in him a lot.
When Anna came and she commented on Japón, actually she gave me very good observations. She liked the film very much, but I remember that she said one thing she didn't like was that she thought that Alejandro Ferretis overdid it somehow, in a way, and I agree with her actually. I know maybe this is for foreigners, maybe even for most Mexicans it's not so obvious, but she said that he would speak like in such a solemn fashion, And I remember when we were shooting that, I thought often that he was like, I told him, you are not doing a French perfume ad, so please just calm down and don't be so pompous. And I like that very much from Anna, this observation.
And in terms of your casting, I know that you prefer to cast, as opposed to casting professional actors, you prefer to cast people. You like very naturalistic acting. So before we talk about how you came to Anna, I just wondered if you could talk about Marcos Hernandez, who the central guy in the film, because I understand he was a colleague of your father's at the Ministry of Culture. Yes. So I just wondered if you could say something about that. Okay. And also, what was it that convinced you he'd be right for that?
Okay. Well, so I do work. I have worked so far with non-actors, without exception. This responds to many reasons. The first one is that I want them to be completely pure. I want my film to. I don't want people in my film to have any. I don't want the viewers to see people in my film with whom they would have references from other films. I think the unconscious cannot stop this process. So I want them to be debutants. This is absolutely necessary. And secondly, I'm not very interested in interpretation. I don't care about representation so much. Well, actually, not at all. So I want to capture the essence of the people I like, as you would do in still photography. You take someone you like, you put him against a wall, and you photograph, and you take a photograph of him because you want what he gives off, what he emanates, and that's it. This is what I care about. So I don't need anyone trained in this technique to represent. That's a reason. Marcos, for instance, is someone that he's worked for the Ministry of Culture for 30 years as a functionary, and he's been driving people there. And my father worked there for some 10 years, and he was very often attached to my father's work. So he would drive my father, and eventually we would take the family to the theater and things like this. So I know him well since, and they stopped working together since 10 years, and I have kept seeing Marcos very often. And I just enjoy his presence so much. I like the way he is. I like what he says. I like a lot of things about him. He actually had a small role in Japón. He's the one who drives a tractor and says "bloody cat" and just throws him out of the engine. Actually, I wanted him for Japón in a larger part, and we made a test, and he just couldn't say a really simple sentence. But I think it was just not the right moment, and I didn't approach him properly. So when I proposed him for the second film, when I thought about him, I remember I talked to Diego, my director of photography, and other people about it, and they thought I was crazy. But I thought, no, I want someone very introverted, and this will work very well. In the end, the funny thing is not that it only worked well in the sense that he's introverted in the film too, but that he learned so fast and so well what he should do that in 2 days he was very powerful. He would feel the light, he would feel the camera angles, he would remind the lines like in one single reading, and then actually he got to the point where he would, whenever his wife that wasn't so good, because with Anna and him it was really good in this sense. I mean, they both revealed themselves as natural actors, but his wife wouldn't. So he would, for example, whisper the lines to her when she would forget. But I didn't never even talk about him about this. But he would feel it, and he wouldn't do it in a stupid way, like when the camera would be looking, would be seeing his lips. He would do it only when he saw that he knew that the camera wouldn't, that we wouldn't notice. I mean, the viewer wouldn't notice, and then he would whisper the phrase to her, and he was just so intelligent. It was a great pleasure.
And how did you become involved in the? I mean, I read an interesting quote from you where you said that the character that you play is similar to you in real life, but without your excesses. So goodness knows.
Did I said that?
Yeah.
Really?
How did you work on the character? Because I also read that Carlos changed the original part of the female character exclusively to match your personality. So I just wondered if you could talk about how you feel about that and how you worked with Carlos on getting the role of Anna on the screen.
Well, I think Anna is a very, very simple role in a way, because she's nothing and she's everything, at the same time. And you can see a lot of what she's doing, but then again, you never know why she's doing the things. There's no reason. So it's good because you don't have to do the mentally story and the projection of what's going to happen. It's just what it is. So this I really liked about doing a character like this, so simple, And then also hard for me because I'm very much a little bit different. And then, but Carlos also, he's very, I think when a person really knows what he wants, it's very easy to make other people to comprehend and actually perform that. He was always, okay, this is what you, at least for me, it was really confident that I knew he would say cut when he would see what he wanted from me. So this made me very relaxed in that way. Like I put all the problems in him, If it's bad, it's your problem, not mine.
Responsibility.
It's your responsibility. So I knew he was, I believe in him, and I knew he would say cut whenever he would want it. So that made me relax, and it was just kind of, I wouldn't say easy because it was hard, but yeah, easy in a way that it was just every day come there without no expectation, no idea of what was going to happen, just put my own clothes, and Carlos tell me, now you go and you do this, and you say like this. But in a very, never told me, oh, you have to make a face and you have to feel like this and your eyes have to look. It was always very like almost like a robot, but with much more like a robot alive.
Very good. And what about your relationship with Marcos? Because he's somebody that, and we will talk about this, you do obviously have to do some quite difficult scenes with him. So I'd imagine he's someone that you would have to have a good working relationship with him. And again, from reading one of your previous interviews, the two of you obviously got on very well. So I just wondered if you could say a little bit about your co-star.
Oh yeah, I love Marcos very much. I think he's great. For me, it was very amazing to work with such a simple and straight person, like we are so much more complicated than he is, For him, maybe sometimes he would be a little bit uncomfortable, but he would not make a mess about it, He would not stand up and be like, oh, what is happening, why are you doing this to me? he would always, when you come and you see to him, he would be like, what is this going on, no? But always very, very smooth, very cool guy. And I laughed a lot. He's really funny. He doesn't seem like, but he's a really, really funny guy. So at the end, we were even like joking, no? Like, okay, give me a nice kiss and laughing. He provokes me a lot of tenderness, a lot of tenderness. Like, he seems like such a big man and like this, but then again, he's so pure and white and clear, a really beautiful human. So for me, it was amazing to work with somebody like that, learn from somebody like that.
I must say that in case anyone wonders why he's not here, well, he doesn't speak English, first of all, and second, he wouldn't like to be here. He doesn't care about these things. He came to Cannes after 2 days. He said, Carlos, I've had enough. What's this circus? I want to go back and be with my family and have a barbecue, you know.
Good attitude. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it more and more.
Yeah, I'd say this Hamish will, he will be grateful I said that.
Yeah.
He's very concerned about this issue. Okay.
And this is something I was going to ask you both to talk about. Again, you know, kind of skirting around the issue. Some of the scenes are obviously quite difficult and quite complex. And I know from Carlos's early film, Your Poem, which also kind of featured scenes of a very kind of sexual nature. Again, I read that with this film that you did the most difficult scenes straight away. These were some of the first scenes that you filmed. I just wondered if you could both talk about if that is true and what the benefits of doing that was and how Carlos helped both yourself and Marcos prepare for these difficult scenes.
Well, it was actually something very smart to do, no? Because one, you get to people to be naked, and especially naked and having sex in a room with people, then everything is kind of going downhill in a way. The first day where I just had to look at him, I was so nervous, and we were both nervous first time in front of a camera, and everything was just a lot of stressed in a way. And then the second day that we shot, we had to be naked in the bed, and it's just like when you're naked with people, you actually get to know people in a different level, no, completely. So this was really, really great, I think, for both of us. Then after that, we could have worked in a much more relaxed way between me and Marcos. So I thought that was a very smart thing. And also in front of a camera, no? After you've been naked in front of a camera and having sex, the rest go and say this and cry and do whatever you have to do. It's something much, much easier. And it was very nice to work in these kind of sexual scenes with a person like Marcos, because maybe something that I would have never done in my life, and it was a great opportunity.
Actually, about how I managed or got them to follow me into these sequences, I think it's basically a matter of communication and sharing your thoughts and your views on life, you know. Like, sometimes people have asked me if I paid them a lot of money and things like this. And whenever they ask me this, I think, well, of course you would have never convinced them, because it's not a matter of money, precisely. Actually, we have done it for no money, if that had been the necessity, you know, the need. So, for example, with Anna, it was very simple, because she shares a lot of my views anyway, in this sense, and she had thought a lot about these things. She doesn't have a problem with her body or anything like this. With them, they are very sensitive and sensible people also. So Marcos and his wife, it was just a matter of talking and talking for a long time and hearing what they had to say. But Marcos, in the end, you know, Marcos, I think it's all a question of trust, but really trust. Marcos really trusts me in every sense. If I tell him to jump out a window, he probably would without looking out the window, because he would know there was a net. And this is how it worked out. And he knows that if I do it, it's because there's something that, even if he doesn't understand or not, it doesn't matter. He knows that it is important, and he feels it this way. And for his wife in the film, as we didn't know each other, because I found her I didn't talk about this before, but the rest of the actors I found while I was location scouting and while I was preparing the film for this year. So with her, I had to have more talks. Eventually, actually, I just remember now that she said, "You have to have a word with my husband."
Yes.
And I said, well, yeah, okay. And the husband came, and when I saw him, he came out of a police car. dressed in police uniform, and he was a commander of the police, of some kind of regional police. So I thought, oh my God, when especially Mexican police and everything. So we had a little conversation, and he said, well, it's fine, it's her decision, she's free to do what she wants. The only thing I would like to ask you that is that it is simulated, and simulated, not real sex, but simulated. And I said, well, yeah, that's granted. So so that's how it went. But for her, it was more difficult to get naked, although it was just difficult because of modesty, but not because of the fact that she has, let's say, very far from typical or today's icon of beauty or standard of beauty. That didn't bother her at all. Actually, she is happy with what she is.
She was very confident with her body.
With herself, yes,
completely.
exactly. Definitely, this wasn't a problem for her. She says she knows clearly that self-confidence and that what you are resides inside you, and your body's just a carrier,
Just to finish off on the sex side of it, one of the things I like about your films that other people have problems with, and there's two things here, is you show sex as it really is. You show normal people having sex, whereas in most films, American mainstream films, it's Tom Cruise and not Nicole Kidman, obviously, but other actors.
Yes.
It's all beautiful picture.
Yes.
The other thing I like about your films in which people see as transgressive, as you show in Yapon, you showed an older man and an even older woman having sex. In this film, you show Anna, who's from one class, and Marcos, who's from a different class, having sex, which people see as transgressive. Do you see that in the sex that you portray in your films?
Let's say that I portray sex in my films as I have it. I don't have it with sheets up to here, like it happens in all of the American films. Or I don't have it always on this kind of very dark light where you don't see anything. I have it like naked on an open place and many times in daylight. I think a lot of the people do. So you only see sex portrayed in film, as you were saying, in films where it is just like a provocation that it's happening, but you don't see much. Like nothing is shown, but everything is there. And I'd rather do the other way around. Like everything is shown, but it's not so evident. Not everything is there for you like that. It makes you think. It can wander around. But the physical things are there. Like when in a film you see someone eating a sandwich, it's straightforward. That's it. Apart from that, you see pornography, which I find not interesting, really. Pornography is just, there's nothing apart from what you see. There's nothing but the bodies. And that is not interesting. The purpose of pornography is to sexually arouse the viewer. What I do, I thought I need to film sex because it's important for the film, because a lot of things happen while they are having sex, and because this means and makes you feel a lot of things. So how would I shoot it, I thought, very often. And this is why I decided to shoot the beginning in this way and the end, Marcos and his wife in this other way, and Anna and Marcos in this other way. And it's always different ways, but it's always a straightforward way, and it's not a manipulative way. It's an open way, yeah, so some people do get even angry about that, but some people love it, and I think it's honesty, and it's a matter of fact, and I try to look for beauty in this sexual relationships.
And is that something that you also admire about Carlos's films, that he shows the kind of nuts and bolts of sex?
Yes, that's something I admire very much, and at the same time it was something for me a real honor to be able to participate in a film that, again, will not show half of the nipple of this very famous, beautiful actress, which is completely irrelevant with the movie because it was a horror movie and she was gonna get killed. So it was great, to be part of a film where the sex goes even beyond the body, and beyond. For me, it's like beyond the flesh, beyond the body, beyond even a sexual scene, because it really becomes an emotion. It really hits you, and it's daily life. Not because we don't see two people like Marcos and Berta having sex in the movies doesn't mean that they don't have it, and it doesn't mean that it cannot be beauty. I remember the thing what I said when I got out, when I saw the movie for the first time. I thought this is like a visual poem, all the movie, especially like all the sex scenes are really amazing.
I must say very quickly that some people even think that I'm obsessed with this awkward sex or fat people or things like this. I think most of the people are this way. Most of the people, we are closer to Marcos and his wife out of the 6,000 million people in the world than to precisely Hollywood stars. But we're so used to this habit that whenever we see something else, we think it's grotesque, or we think it's unreal. And it's like even some people thought fat people shouldn't have sex or shouldn't have any emotion. But really, we've been aggressed. Even by some certain journalists, she has been also like, why do you show these people having
how can you think that art is too fat people? But with this way, despective way talking about Marcus Amber, how can you think art is too fat ugly people having sex in a camera? Wow, no? These reporters who went and studied in Harvard for 4 years then come and ask you.
Let's talk about the thing we're talking about the cameras off. I think there's a few things that are quite key again. Is this idea of Mexico City? The 2 points I'd make is that it does show a very realistic Mexico City. Certainly the Mexico City that I knew when I went, which is kind of full of lots of contradictions. Wealth and poverty and lots of paradoxes. But also the film to me feels very universal. The themes of the film are very universal, and yet it also seems inextricably linked to the fact that it's set in Mexico City. So I wonder if you could talk about that, and also maybe say something about the logistical nightmares that filming in Mexico City must have brought.
Yes. Well, I think you're right in the sense of saying that although it's very Mexican and very Mexico City, the whole feeling you have, it is universal at the same time. Actually, I could say it is universal because it is so local, it's so authentic, and like a film by Ozu, it's so Japanese that therefore it can become universal. In the beginning, I used to say that in this film, Mexico City was a character, and I was trying to get the feeling and the essence of Mexico City out into the camera, which is not true actually. I was interested in the city really only. But if I had been Turkish, it would have been Istanbul. If I had been English, it would have been probably London or Sheffield or whichever city I wanted to place the story on. Just the city and whatever it means. But this is universal. What it means agglomeration. It means multitudes, masses, stress, aggression, some oasis of pleasure and relaxation. Also, a lot of things. So it happens at the same time that when I'm doing that, it is Mexico City, because as I said, I'm Mexican, I decided to do the film there. But so therefore you can see Mexico City and you can learn about it and you can feel it as a viewer, but this is only a sub-product. I never tried to do that as a primary goal. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the internal conflict of this man and his context. So of course, you do see the city and you do feel it and you do learn about it. But it's like in any Dostoevsky story, I don't think intended to do some explanation of what Russia is. He was interested in his characters, but his characters were Russian. He knew them so well that in the end, as a byproduct, he would speak about Russia. So this is how I feel the city. It has everything, all these contradictions we talked about. And it's true that there's all this violence and that these kidnappings happen in Mexico, and this is a matter of fact. It is not something that can be discussed. But it's also true that it is a place where there's a lot of peace, and there are peaceful places, and most of the people are very nice. And I feel, I see, for example, Anna, how she lives in a part of Mexico and how she walks around with her devil sticks and everything, and she's like in a sort of calmness and oasis, and this is a place which is not like one of these neighborhoods like far away protected by guards. It's like in the center of Mexico, anyone can go there, and it's a place full of contradictions like most cities, and this is something I appreciate. So I love this place. I really feel very close to it with its nightmares. And I'll come very quickly now to the point about the nightmarish thing. The nightmarish thing about shooting there. It's bureaucracy. I don't know whether the pre-Hispanic countries loved bureaucracy anyway, or if it was something brought by the Europeans. But really most Mexicans, if you show them a formulary, a paper to fill in, a form, they become excited, it's like something great. So when you needed to shoot in the Zócalo, we needed 20 permits, 20, the police, I don't know what. So all this is really hard. In Mexico, it's really hard to work. Everything else, as you saw, it's very easy. It's very easy to rob a bank. It's very easy not to not work and not die at the same time. I don't know how, but everyone can do nothing. It's like an easy life, and it's really comfortable. But working is so hard. Establishing an enterprise is so hard. I was really amazed that we had these 20 permits to work in the Zócalo. Every morning we had to be there at 3:30 to see the military coming out. And we would only get a shot every 5 or 4 days. place because they would always march in a different position, or the lights would be blocked, or some drunkard would walk in the frame. It was like very, very nightmarish because we had to get up so early. But there, I remember that only the trucks would stop, so they would descend the material, and immediately we would have 3 police cars bugging us and asking us for the permits and whatever. And at the same time, there was anyone complaining about anything in a big truck. I remember one day there was a drunkard on a big trailer driving around the Zócalo at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then people also went to the toilet next to the flagpole, and you can just go and establish there any kind of camp. So like in Mexico, there's a lot of freedom in a certain way. It's like in the UK, we also don't have identity cards. There are so few countries in the world that have the situation. Such few countries, and I wanted to say that. For example, marches or like demonstrations on the streets, you don't need a permit. You can just go and block any street any day. I think this is the only place in the world where you can do this. And at the same time, you need 20 permits to shoot a film and hire people and engage people in a job and pay them and social security and everything. But for that, you really have a nightmare.
I want to talk a little bit about the look of the film, because I think one of the things that is so impressive about your films is the way they're actually made. And with this film, again, I read that because Japón is a film that is the cinematography is so fluid and the camera work so beautiful, but I read that with Battle in Heaven you wanted to construct the film more through the editing than through the camera work. I mean, there's a very beautiful 360-degree shot, but could you just say more about why you wanted to do that?
Sure. Well, first of all, I wanted the looks of the film to be between blue, green, black and white, just to make it like cold, like to create this kind of chirurgical kind of feeling in the whole city, because this is what Marcos is feeling, and I wanted him to be away from everything outside. And then, as regarding space, maybe just a matter of feeling, I started discovering, while I did Japón, I was very happy about feeling the camera and feeling it as a brush, like moving around and getting the feeling of space and time through the camera as it moves. And but while I was editing certain sequences in Japón, when there are cuts, I had a lot of pleasure, like feeling this construction and this time through the cuts. And in this film, I wanted more, just because of my own pleasure, to discover through the cut and to feel the cut more powerfully. Of course, this has to do with the fact that in the cities you are limited by the fact that there are some buildings that you don't like, or many things that obstruct the views. So you have to be more reductive in your views, and you have to construct more through editing. In the countryside, it's so beautiful that you can just move around. But at the same time, I for example, there's a sequence in Battle in Heaven, which is in the Blue Room, wherein Marcos confesses to Anna that he has kidnapped a baby and he has died in mourning, where there are, maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 shots only. And I love that construction, it really makes me feel I'm inside a clock, a clockwork actually, that is not necessarily rhythmic, but it's still a clockwork. And I love the fact of just changing the point of view and having these fixed angles, and it just creates some kind of pleasure. It's another kind of language, and I wanted to go further in that exploration in this film. And then at certain points that stops, and then we have also, like as you said, there's a couple of big pans and even a 360 pan.
I want to ask something to both of you, and this is your fault, because I think the other thing Carlos does with his films, beautiful cinematography, beautiful use of music, the Arvo Part music, but he always gives them these very enigmatic titles. He did it with Japón, and he's done it again with Battle in Heaven. So I just wondered if you could both finish just by saying a little bit about what the title signifies to each of you. You go first.
Yeah. Well, for me, definitely it's a Battle in Heaven. No, it's a big contradiction. Like Mexico. Mexico is also a big contradiction. So beautiful and so ugly at the same time, and so rich and so poor, and like we were saying, no, is this. So this in one way actually made me thought a lot about that. And also it's a real battle in heaven in a way, no? It's like the battle in heaven of Marcos. And Mexico, it's actually kind of surrealistic to say it heaven, but in a way it can also be heaven. And for many, many moments in the movie, there is a heavenly sensation, no? All of the time. So even such a chaotic city like Mexico can be heaven. This for me.
I like the, I do
Nice, really.
titles, and that is a plausible answer, both of them. And I'm sure that if you thought of one, I would like it too, because I just give a feeling, and then you fill it up. Like, I read the Bible afterwards. Someone told me about this passage about the battle in heaven, and I didn't know about it, and the film existed already, and it's angels and demons fighting and on heaven, actually, well, on the sky, out of the earth, and then the angels would win the battle, and the demons would fall burning in fire into the atmosphere and into the earth. And I love this idea of these demons falling in fire, and this could be like the downfall of Marcos at the end when he's going to the basilica. Like after all the fight, then there's all that struggle begins with a life taken, then there's all the struggling, and then in the end there's another life taking, and just it didn't deblock, it rather exploded, so as if the demon had been lit on fire and would be falling apart. I love all these kind of things that can be attached to this title. Some people ask me if it's something about the Battle of England, the Second World War dogfight. And well, it's interesting, but maybe these people will be very disappointed when they actually see the film, but this is why the poster has nothing to do with planes. Well, it's an open thing. About music, very quickly, just okay, the beginning, I wanted to use it so much. This is an excellent British composer. It was actually, I didn't know him, but when I did the Edinburgh Film Festival 3 years ago, Trevor Johnson, a very good journalist, gave me his records, and I started hearing very much of John Tavener. And I just thought this piece is so powerful, the way he uses the chords and the way it enlarges everything. And this is what I wanted, like from the minimum, the Anna's hair from the back, it would explode into something much bigger. Then later on the petrol station, I just wanted this contrast between something as banal as filling up your car, and then this probably one of the best or most powerful compositions by Bach, which is probably one of the most powerful composers in life. And that creates this beautiful symbiosis. I remember when Anna saw the film, she was talking to me about how she thought the engine of the car would make her think of a brain. Oh, that was my mother. You told me about the stomach and how this car could be a living being, and all this with the music, and how it's used diegetically all of a sudden, and then undiegetically, or source and score, as some people say. And you never really know. And in the end, it's source, but in the beginning, it was score, and I like all these things, And then the march is just like a powerful way of saying this is a funeral march, and they are dead, like the way they are lying next to each other. It's like a premonition, but at the same time, the energy coming out from it, it's also lively, and it gives you a lot of power, And this comes from the south of Spain when they do these processions this music is from the 16th century, and all these funeral processions, I find them so powerful because they're meant to be precisely funeral, or what is it, luto, mourning, Easter is mourning, but at the same time there's so much life in them, and I wanted them for the football and for the premonition of death too. So it's like both are connected somehow, and then in the end there's this black hole, 1 minute black hole with the music. I just hope the viewers will stay until the credits come up, like just 1 minute hearing the music and seeing nothing on the screen. And well, that was my idea for the